Good afternoon. After a lot of delay, let's start our discussion. Okay, so I will be starting the discussion from today itself, from 13th of June. Then we shall be going the past 1 week. So for today, for 13th June, not many topics were there in The Hindu. So basically, I took 3 topics from The Hindu and 1 from Indian Express. So this first project about Project Kusha, I think we discussed in previous week class also. So I think I remember some of the faces who were there in previous class. So can anyone tell me what is Project Kusha? In last week class only we discussed. Yes, madam, you were there in previous week class. So what is Project Kusha? You don't remember? At least tell me the subject, to which subject it is related. Yes, anyone? Few familiar faces I can see. So if anyone was there in last week's, you can't say that we were not there in last week's class. So we discussed this project. At least tell me the subject, to which subject it is related. We discussed S-400 missile, right? And yes, then after that, what happened in that topic? Yes? I'm not asking about S-400, that from which country we imported. How this project is related, that's what I'm asking. Yes, louder? Yes, very good. So it is related to India's Sudarshan Chakra mission. So basically it is related to securing the India's airspace. So I shall be discussing. I asked because in last week class only we discussed. That's why I asked. Okay, second topic is related to retail inflation, that is the consumer price index. So here basically the news will be that CPI is 16-month high. So that's why we will be discussing that what all components are there in CPI, because in previous year questions also some of the questions are related to CPI, that which component in CPI has the highest weightage or which component in the WPI has the highest weightage. So we shall be discussing all these things. Next is about a herbicide, that is Paraquat herbicide. So not many things are important related to this topic. We shall be discussing what this herbicide is and why this is a cause of concern. After that, this topic, land port management system. So what are the significance of this and what all things can be asked in prelims. So these are the topics just for today. After that, 12th June till 11th June we shall be discussing. So yes, first topic is related to Project Kusha. Thank you. So here the context is not much important. Here we just need to know about Project Kusha. So basically the context is the Defence Minister of India has described Project Kusha as the potential game changer. So see, if you remember in last class we discussed about S-400 defense system, right? So tell me what is S-400 defense system? First of all, from which country we imported this system? Yeah. Very good. What are the basic things? What are the specifications? Whether it is air to air, it is surface to air, surface to air. Very good. And why it is important for India? Yes, air defense system. Very good. So as you told that this Project Kusha is important for India's Sudarshan Chakra mission. So if we talk about Sudarshan Chakra mission, so its main aim is to secure the airspace of India. So basically if we talk about mission Sudarshan Chakra, so here the main objective of this mission is to ensure to secure airspace of India through indigenous weapons or through indigenous systems, because S-400 is not indigenous system of India. But though it is helping India to secure its airspace, but S-400 is not indigenous system of India. So that's why India is focusing on Project Kusha. So under Project Kusha, all what we will be developing, the specifications will be same as S-400 missile system. But important thing will be, it will be India's own system and not will be imported from any other country. So this was important. So please remember, because I think UPSC will not ask in very much detail about Project Kusha. Just you have to remember that it is related to what? So it is related to India's defense system, and that too securing India's airspace. So basically you can consider Project Kusha as a kind of creating umbrella in the India's airspace. So whatever aerial targets can target India, for example missiles, for example drones, so we have to intercept all those weapons and we have to destroy all those weapons. So this is the main target of Project Kusha, and the umbrella mission is the mission Sudarshan Chakra. So it want to ensure that by 2025 the entire airspace of India is protected. That's it. Okay, so if we talk about Project Kusha, so Project Kusha is an indigenous long-range surface-to-air missile system, because S-400 is also surface-to-air missile system, that too it is long-range. So here Project Kusha is also long-range surface-to-air missile system. Now agency, you have to remember that which agency has created it. So it is DRDO, that is Defense Research and Development Organization. So whenever you read in the news about Project Kusha, Russia's S-400 missile system, every time it will come in the news, because we want to create the comparable system. Now, if we talk about the Project Kusha, so since I am saying that our objective is to defend the India's airspace, so Project Kusha is doing it through a layered strategy. Layered strategy means under first layer of Project Kusha, some of the missiles will come who will be having the range of around 150 kilometers, and the last stage will be having the range of around 400 kilometers. What is the meaning of that? See, if we are talking about Project Kusha, so this is a complete system. I think in last class also I discussed that S-400 is a complete system. You cannot say S-400 is just a missile. S-400 is a complete system. That means it will be having the missiles, it will be having the missile launchers, it will be having the radars, it will be having all the control systems. So if I am talking about the Project Kusha, so Project Kusha will also be having the radars, the missile launchers, all the missiles, etc. So what these missiles will do, so here I am telling it M1, M2, M3. So these are the three layers under which Project Kusha will work. So the missiles which are coming under the innermost layer of India, so those missiles can intercept the targets at till around 150 kilometers. Intercepting the targets means whenever the target comes in our radar, we will just target it and we will destroy it. So the innermost layer of Project Kusha can target the missiles up to 150 kilometers, and the outermost layer can target up to 400 kilometers. That's it. These all things you must know just for the prelims. Now, since we were discussing about the mission Sudarshan Chakra, so objective we already discussed. For the prelims, you must remember this year, that till what year India is planning to secure its entire airspace. Yes. Now, second article. So, second article is related to retail inflation. Retail inflation means inflation related to things which are directly used by the consumers, by you and me, which we are directly using. Inflation related to those things is known as retail inflation, right? So, retail inflation we also call as consumer price index, right? How retail inflation is being measured? It is consumer price index. And what is WPI? What is wholesale price index? Yes? Yes? The name only says wholesale. At least explain something. Yes? Without taxes, yes, you can say. Because wholesale means you are directly giving the mass of goods to the dealer. You are not giving directly to the consumers. So wholesale products will come in that category. Okay. So see here, news is not much important. News is that recently the wholesale price index, the retail inflation or the consumer price index of India is 16-month low. Important thing is that this 16-month high. Important thing is this inflation has been driven by the food prices in India. So food is also one of the important commodity which we are directly consuming. So here, what is the learning for us? We must know all the components of the consumer price index, because UPSC at least can ask this much, that which component in consumer price index has the highest weightage, or which product in the WPI or wholesale price index has the highest weightage. I will show the previous year question also. This type of question has already been asked. So yes, if we talk about the retail inflation or consumer price index, so what is its purpose? It tracks the change in retail prices of goods and services which the households purchase for their daily consumption. Important thing here is we as a consumers use product goods also, we as a consumers use services also. So in consumer price index, goods will also come and services will also come. But if we talk about WPI or wholesale price index, so their services will not be included. So this is the major difference between CPI. So it's not the only difference, but this is one of the major difference, because difference will come in the agency also, that which agency releases this index. This is also important for prelims. So here first important difference is that it includes both goods as well as services. See, these are very basic facts. Sometimes you don't find logic in some of the things, but you just have to remember for the prelims. So please remember, if we talk about wholesale price index, services will not be included. If we talk about the consumer price index, services will be included. You can remember in this way that we as a consumers use both. We use goods also, we use services also. That's why in CPI, both the things will be included. Now comes the ministry or the agency which releases this index. So this index is released by National Statistical Office, that is NSO, and NSO comes under MOSPI, that is Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI. So this ministry is important. So this we are talking about CPI, that is Consumer Price Index. Now if we talk about WPI, so who releases WPI? Which agency? So here we discussed about agency, we discussed about ministry. So same things tell me about WPI also, that who releases WPI and that agency comes under which ministry. Yes? Any wild guess? At least give any answer. Yes, yes? Yes, very good. Office of Economic Advisor, which comes under Ministry of Commerce. So this entity which comes under Ministry of Commerce, it releases WPI, that is Wholesale Price Index. So since we are reading about CPI, so at least in your page you can make a separate column. You can just compare WPI. So two differences we discussed just now. WPI will not include services, and who releases WPI? It is released by Office of Economic Advisor, and this comes under Ministry of Commerce. Now, for next year prelims, base year is very important, because until last year the base year was 2012. So what is the meaning of base year? Yes? Louder. Yes? Louder. So whatever price you are measuring, that thing you will take as a base, that thing you will take as a zero. So for example, if in 2012 your price of any good was 100 rupees and in 2013 the price went to 105. So what you will say, the inflation was 5%. That's why we are saying it is as a base year. So please remember, this year only the base year was changed. So at present the base year of Consumer Price Index is 2024 and not 2012. Now, yes, this I was discussing. So before discussing this, I will show you the previous year question. Then you will get an idea that what all things you have to remember. Yes, I think it's very blurred. Are you able to read it, or I will read it? So please read the question. 2 only. Okay. Any other answer? 2 only. Okay. Any other answer? A. So one answer is A. Yes? Any other answer? Okay, no answer. So here first statement is saying the weightage of food in Consumer Price Index is higher than that in Wholesale Price Index. So this was the intention to show this question, that you must know the categories. What all categories are coming in various index, what all categories are part of WPI, what all categories are part of CPI. And that too you have to remember the percentage also, the approx percentage. If it's 35, you can remember 30. In this way you have to remember. So we will be answering this question. Now I will come back to the topic. Yes, so here we will discussing. See, as I discussed just now that base year of CPI has been changed. Along with the base year, some of the changes in the percentages have also been done. So what are the changes? See, if we talk about the earlier base year, so earlier this was the component of food. This was the component of food and beverages. And earlier food and beverages constituted around 45% of consumer price index. So majority of the percentage goes to the food products, food and beverages products in the consumer price index, which was related to the base year 2012. Now, if we talk about the base year 2024, so here the percentage of food and beverages is around 36%. So at least you must remember, because this year only the percentage have been changed. But important thing is that still food and beverages have the highest percentage in consumer price index. But since it has been changed this year only, so you can remember the percentage also. So earlier it was around 45%, now it has become around 36%. So see, if you want to understand this also, that why this percentage have been changed, this percentage have been changed because of addition of some of the important services. Because if you talk about 2 or 3 decades back, maybe we as a consumers were not using some of the services. For example, the online streaming platforms. For example, no, earlier we don't used to watch this much movies. If we want to watch movie, we were going in theaters only. But now at home only we are watching movies. So we are taking subscriptions of various online platforms. So these things are coming under services only. So that's why, since many type of extra services and recreational activities are added, that's why the percentage of food and beverages have reduced. But please remember, still food and beverages have the highest percentage. Okay, so I think we are done with this. Yes, so now if we try to answer, so yes, any question? So if we talk about this statement, the weightage of food and consumer price index is higher than that in wholesale price index. So since this question was asked earlier, when the base year was 2012, now try to answer now. So I am telling you about WPI. So basically WPI has 3 categories. Wholesale price index have 3 categories. What are those categories? First category will be manufactured goods. Second category will be the primary goods. And third category will be the fuel products. These are the 3 categories under the WPI. In CPI, you have many categories. You don't need to remember all the categories. But since it is easy to remember for WPI, UPSC can ask for WPI. So see, why UPSC has asked just for the food? Because for food it is easy to remember. Because though CPI have a lot of categories, food has the highest weightage. And for WPI, you can easily remember. That's why the question was asked on the food items, food and beverages. So if we talk about the manufactured products, so this have around 60% weightage in WPI. If we talk about the primary products, this have around the weightage of 20% and remaining goes to the fuel. Now tell me, now considering the base year 2024, is this statement still valid? Is this statement still correct? Yes? Compare? Yes. Explain why. Yes, the weightage of food in consumer price index is higher than that in wholesale price index. Tell me, what is weightage of food in consumer price index at present? 36%. Very good. What is the weightage of food in the wholesale price index? Okay, tell me, food will come in under which category? Primary. Very good. So why you are not answering? It is visible only, no? In CPI, only food and beverages is having 36%. Here, food comes under primary articles and combined primary articles are constituting 20%. Then the statement is still valid, right? I think it was asked in 2017-18. I don't remember the year, but still it is valid. Second, the WPI does not capture the changes in price of services which CPI does. Is it correct? Reserve Bank of India has now adopted WPI as its key measure of inflation to decide the changing key policy rates. Why? Okay, so RBI is using CPI. Okay, so in CPI we discussed just now that who releases CPI? Which agency releases Consumer Price Index? Yes? I'm not asking ministry, I'm asking the agency. National Statistical Office organization, and it comes under Ministry of Statistics. So see, this we are talking about the consumer price index combined, which is used by the RBI to decide the inflation, to manage the inflation. But there are other kind of consumer price index also, like CPI industrial workers or CPI rural workers. There are other kind of indices also. So apart from this CPI combined, other CPI indices are released by the Labour Bureau. They are not released by the National Statistical Office. Please remember that. Because this PYQ I think was asked in 2014 or 15. Which of the following brings out the consumer price index number for the industrial workers? So see, RBI is also given as an option because RBI releases CPI combined. So here by RBI as an option was given to confuse you, but here the answer will be the Labour Bureau. So go back home and please read about the CPI combined and other related consumer price indices also. Yes, now next article is related to Paraquat. So this is a herbicide. So we will be discussing just the prelims related points. So basically here first question what UPSC can ask, that Paraquat inverted commas was recently in news. It is related to what, or it was recently in news in what context? So at least for these kind of news you must remember the context and you must remember what it is. You don't need to go very much in detail. So what is Paraquat? First answer will be Paraquat is a herbicide. So basically Paraquat is used by the farmers to take out the weeds and to take out the harmful plants. Now problem with Paraquat is that this is one of the most toxic chemicals in the world. So that's why this is a problem. So basically Paraquat have banned for a temporary period of time, especially in Telangana, because it is impacting the health of farmers, especially in this Telangana region. And prelims related fact about Paraquat is World Health Organization have classified it as a category 2 chemical. So this fact can also be asked in the prelims. So it comes under category 2 of the products, which means moderately hazardous and moderately irritating. Yes? Can you please speak louder? Okay, so World Health Organization has categories for different kind of chemicals so that it can tell the countries. So if it is coming under category 2, that means it is moderately hazardous. If World Health Organization is keeping a chemical in category 1, that means it is suggesting the countries that you must ban that chemical completely. This is the meaning of that. So why we are talking about World Health Organization? Because this is a trustable agency across all the countries in the world. So that's why this is an important fact about the prelims, that this is this much hazardous that even World Health Organization has kept it under the category 2. So that's why World Health Organization cannot impose anything on the countries. This you know, right? It can only suggest or it can only advise the countries. So that's why since it has kept under the category 2 this chemical, that means country must ban this chemical. And if we talk about banning, so its sale is already banned in around 70 countries in the world, especially in China and Europe. But still India is India. So India and US is still using this chemical. What is the reason for that? Why still India is using it? Because buying this chemical, actually this is very economic. So it's not costly to buy this chemical. And second thing is, this chemical will show its effect immediately. Immediately it will eliminate all the weeds in the agricultural field. That's why farmers are using it. But problem with this is it is impacting the health of farmers. So what are the impact on their health? Severe damage to lungs, kidneys and livers, irreversible organ failure, death in many cases. So these are some of the important things. And plus, for some of the farmers who are not able to repay their loans or whose agricultural yield or productivity is not very good, this chemical is used as a mode of suicide also. That's why government is planning to ban this chemical in India. But please remember this for prelims, this is important, that though we are talking that this chemical is very harmful for the farmers, especially this thing is seen in the Telangana region. So why the government in Telangana is not banning this chemical? Because it is affecting the health of farmers. Why it is not banning? The reason for that is in India, you cannot completely ban a chemical from any state or from entire country without changing the rules and regulations. So one day, no, government just can't do that. That one day, no, the government will say that from today you cannot use this chemical. If you want to do that, you must do the suitable amendments or you must do the suitable changes in the given rules and regulations. So that's why still the government of Telangana is not able to ban it completely. Government have imposed a ban, but that ban will be temporary. Again, the farmers will start using. So in that case, the state government as well as central government have to make the changes in the existing rules and regulations. Yes, next article is related to India's new land port management system. So basically, this management system, this was in the news with this name, Vinimay. So what is Vinimay? Vinimay is basically India's new land port management system. So news is very simple. Just you must have a basic idea of what is the meaning of land port. So do you have any idea what is the meaning of land port? Ports you know, right? What are ports? Ports are present in the coastal areas, right? What is the land port? Yes? Louder? River port you are saying. Any other answer? He is saying river port. Border areas, land border areas, right? Any other answer? From the name itself, what you are getting? Maybe? You are saying ports near to land. Okay, any other thing? Landlocked, yes. So how it can be possible? How ports can be landlocked regions? Okay, so I will tell you. Basically, ports are nothing but the land crossing between two countries. So if there is a land border between two countries, so that crossing point will be known as land port. Understood? So basically, through that crossing point, what all things can pass? Your trade can pass, right? Passengers can pass. Each and everything can pass from their land border. For example, if we talk about the northeast region. So here, this is India, and here we will be having Myanmar, right? And here we will be having Bangladesh. So all these borders are considered as the land ports. So basically all those points between India, Myanmar, India, Bangladesh, from where goods, services, any kind of material can move to and fro, all these points are known as the land ports. So basically this news is about land port management system. So first of all, let's understand in detail about land port. So see, for example, this is a truck cargo, right? And this truck cargo has to cross from Bangladesh to India, right? Now this truck cargo has to move from Bangladesh to India. Now what all things this truck cargo has to do whenever this truck is crossing the border? It has to meet the immigration authorities also, it has to meet with the custom authorities also, it has to meet with the security personnel also, and any other formality has to be done on their border checkpost, right? So the main purpose of this Vinimay system or land port management system is basically this is a digital system. So what will happen in this digital system? The entire information of this truck driver, this truck cargo will be uploaded on this digital platform. So separately, this driver does not have to go to the separate authorities, because it is delaying the process also, right? It is delaying the trade process also. So each and everything will be uploaded on this digital platform, so that authorities are already available. Okay, this is this is the information available with us. We don't have any problem, and let's allow this truck to cross the border. So this is just the news. What is Vinimay? Vinimay is the land port management system. What is land port management system? It is a digital platform which ensures the seamless movement of goods as well as services across the land borders in India. What are land ports? Land ports are just the border checkposts which are available at the land borders between India and other countries. Now, next important thing for the prelims is, so I think, have we missed anything? So land port management system we already discussed. Yes. agency is important, that who developed this land port management system. So it is developed by the Land Ports Authority of India under the vision of the smart borders. So see, this Land Port Authority of India, you must remember that this is a statutory body. That means it is formed under a statute, it is formed under a law. So it is formed under the same law. It is formed under Land Ports Authority of India 2010. In 2010, Act was formed, and under that Act, this body was established. Now, from whatever knowledge you have, can you please tell me that this authority should come under which ministry in India? Yes? Do we have any ministry related to border management? Yes. So at least tell me which ministry deals with the international borders in India? Foreign Affairs. Okay. Any other answer? Home Ministry. Okay. Any other answer? Ministry of Ports. No, Ministry of Ports will deal with the actual ports in India. Ministry of Waterways. Okay. At least try. Because his answer was also logical only, Ministry of Ports. So I can consider, though that answer is wrong, but I can consider the answer. Yes, any other try? No answer? Ministry of Home. Okay, so this answer is correct. It comes under the Ministry of Home Affairs because mainly the border areas, all the security situations are dealt by the Ministry of Home Affairs only. I think one more topic we'll be discussing in this weekly current affairs about the AFSPA Act. So the AFSPA Act is also related to the security situations, and under that act also Ministry of Home Affairs has important role to play. So for now, please remember that if we are talking about the international border region, so here Ministry of Home Affairs will be involved. So please remember, this Vinimay system is developed by which body? It is Land Ports Authority of India. Land Ports Authority of India is a statutory body. Under which statute it is made? It is made under same statute which came in 2010, in 2010. So I think features you already know. What are the features? It allows secure and real-time sharing of logistics and regulatory information. Just now I discussed that whenever any cargo will be reaching the India's border, his entire information will be updated on the platform, so that he don't have to do certain amount of paperwork, or he don't have to meet the authorities. So I think that's it for the prelims. Yes, this AFSPA Act I was discussing. So basically, this AFSPA Act was in news because the Ministry of Home Affairs is saying that earlier many regions in the northeastern India were coming under AFSPA Act. But Home Ministry is saying that over a period of time, the law and order situation in northeast India is improving. So we are trying to remove this AFSPA Act from many regions in the northeast India. That's why this act was in news. So yes, this only I just discussed, that the announcement was made by the Home Minister of India that AFSPA may remain only in 1 or 2 states in the northeastern region. So for this, we must know a basic background about this AFSPA Act. So please remember, it traces its roots in the Armed Forces Special Powers Ordinance of 1942. So basically, we can trace its roots in the colonial times. So basically, this ordinance was brought by the Britishers in India to suppress the movement, or to suppress the Quit India movement, which was brought under Mahatma Gandhi. So basically, because of that only, this ordinance was brought. Now what happened? After 1942 came 1947, India got independence, right? But even after independence, India was facing a lot of problems, and especially important problem was that many states in India were demanding the independence, or they were demanding the autonomy, and the main highlight was the northeastern part of the India only. And in that too, main highlight was the demand of the separate Nagaland, or demand of Nagaland. So that's why Government of India came with an important act, and that was Armed Forces Special Powers Act of 1958. So what was its main purpose? Its main purpose was to deal with insurgency and armed rebellion in India. Tell me, what is insurgency? Yes? Okay, tell me the difference between both. Armed rebellion also, insurgency also. Yes, at least tell something. You don't understand, because if you're not understanding these words, why we are discussing this act? That's why I'm asking. Tell me, no, in any raw language you can say, what is armed rebellion? What is insurgency? Yes? No idea? No idea? See, insurgency means whenever the citizens of any country is not happy with the government, they will revolt against the government. And this revolt meaning insurgency. Means people are raising their voice against the government. People are showing their dissatisfaction. So this showing dissatisfaction is the meaning of insurgency. And when these insurgents are having the arms and weapons, it converts into armed rebellion. So here, what the people in Northeast India were doing, they were unhappy with the status they were having during the time of independence. That's why they were demanding the government of India that we want a separate country itself. We don't want to merge in India. That's why law and order situation was not good there, and the police authorities, the civilian authorities were not able to handle the law and order situation. That's why government brought this act. Because in this act, army personnel are given the important powers. So when the police is not able to deal with law and order situation, army personnel will come there. And even if army personnel shoot any person, they are immune to any legal action. No one can take legal action if it is required. So army personnel can do that also. So if we talk about the roots, so roots lie in the ordinance in the pre-independence era. After that, government brought this AFSPA Act of 1958. Now, if I ask one question, that whether this Armed Force Special Powers Act is applicable only in the northeastern states, so whether this statement is correct or not. Yes, so this act is applicable in only northeastern states. So see, this act is actually Armed Forces Special Powers Act is applicable in Jammu and Kashmir also. Because there also army personnel are deployed. There also army personnel are given special powers. They can arrest anyone without any warrant. They can shoot anyone if they think that that person is threat to the security. Difference between this is, if we talk about Northeast India, so it is governed under AFSPA Act of 1958, and for Jammu and Kashmir, separate AFSPA Act was made of 1990. So if I ask you the question whether AFSPA is applicable only in Northeastern India, answer will be no, because it is applicable on Jammu and Kashmir also. But does AFSPA 1958 is applicable only in Northeast India? Answer will be yes, because for Jammu Kashmir we have separate act of 1990. Now, if we talk about the AFSPA, so this I already discussed, that this act has given the special powers to the member of the armed forces. To the member of armed forces in the disturbed areas in northeastern states. So disturbed area means any area where law and order situation is not good. So area can be disturbed because of any reasons. Because of the racial insecurity or the political rights or the economic disparities, anything can be reason. But that area is disturbed area, so AFSPA Act can be applicable there. Important thing for the prelims is that who has the authority to designate any area as the disturbed area. I mean, who can say that this area is disturbed area, so the AFSPA Act must be applicable here and military personnel must be deployed here. So who has that authority? Yes, so earlier that authority was with the governor of state or administrator of the union territory, but I think in 1972 this act of 1958 was amended and now the power is given to the central government also. So now the authority to designate any area as the disturbed area is with state government also and is with central government also. So now both can declare any area as the disturbed area. Yes, I think about the power of armed forces also we discussed. Okay. Now, yes, so if we talk about the main regions in the northeastern India where AFSPA is applicable, so basically it is applicable in 4 states. First is Assam, then Manipur, Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh. So mainly in 4 states, and that too in some of the regions of these states this AFSPA is applicable. Yes, next thing is, see, for example, if we talk, this is a region A, for example, in Assam. So now the governor of the state has declared this area as the disturbed area. Now, when any area is declared as the disturbed area, then at least for 3 months, this particular status will remain the same. Even if the situation improves at least for 3 months, that area will come under the status of disturbed area. If situation improves after 3 months, we can change the status. So for prelims, you have to remember this also. Then at least for 3 months, that area will be considered as disturbed area. And this provision comes under which act? So this was given by the Act of Disturbed Area Special Courts Act of 1976. So there is a separate act for the disturbed areas also. So this act says if any area is declared as a disturbed area, then at least for 3 months it will be considered as a disturbed area only. And I think yes, area I already discussed. Now, next article is related to shigellosis disease. So basically, many cases of shigellosis disease were reported in Kerala. So that's why we are discussing this article. So please remember, when we are discussing about any disease, so what all basic things you have to remember. First thing you have to remember that which microorganism is responsible for causing that disease. Right. Second thing you must remember that disease is affecting which part of human body, or whether it can be transmitted from animals to human to animals, or whether it is present only in humans. So if you know 4 or 5 points related to disease, then you can do the study in the targeted manner. So first of all, you will find out that which microorganism is responsible. You will read that. Then you have to read that which organ it is affecting, because you are not reading any kind of chapter, right? You have to read exam oriented. So first of all, you must read that which microorganism is responsible for any disease, then which part of the, which organ or which part of the body it is affecting, then how it is transmitted, how that disease is transmitted, and finally the treatment. These are the 4 categories under which you have to read any kind of disease. So now let's start our discussion. So since we are discussing about the shigellosis is also known as bacillary dysentery. So if it comes in the prelims, shigellosis, bacillary dysentery is the same thing. So this disease is caused by which microorganism? It is caused by bacteria. It is not caused by virus, fungi or protozoa. It is caused by bacteria. What is the name of bacteria? The name of bacteria is Shigella. Which organ of the human body it affects? It affects intestine. So basically, what is the main function of intestine? Its main function is to completely digest the food so that nutrients can be absorbed in body. So if our intestine is affected, then what will happen in our body? What will be the symptoms? Yes, obviously digestive system will not work properly. For example, vomiting can happen, food poisoning can happen. So all these things, because of all these things, Shigella is one of the leading cause of the diarrhea worldwide. Because in diarrhea also same type of symptoms are there, right? So if human body is affected by the Shigella bacteria, it's very likely that a person will be suffering from diarrhea. Next point for the prelims is that human beings are the only natural reservoir of the Shigella bacteria. So please remember, it's very rare, or this type of microorganism cannot be found in the animal body. So this disease cannot infect animal body. Plus second, this disease is not a zoonotic disease. That means it cannot be transferred from animals to humans because it cannot exist in animals' body. After that, transmission. So see, transmission, basically it is transmitted through the fecal oral route. Fecal oral route means what are the situations? When the hygiene is not good, right? So contaminated food, water, poor hygiene, etc., etc. So basically this is a communicable disease. That means it can be transmitted from one person to another. And what are the reasons? Contaminated food, water, or poor hygiene. So I think symptoms I already discussed. And yes, if we talk about the treatment, so if we talk about the treatment of Shigella, so it can be treated on its own if you take care of the hygiene or if you take care of the hydration. So see, here the treatment is not that important, but if you are reading the major diseases, for example, malaria or TB, or so in that cases treatment becomes very important because there you have to read the vaccines also. So though this disease is very small, that's why treatment is not important, but treatment anyway you have to remember about any disease. Yes, this article is very important. See, this article is about the Indian standards which is released by the Bureau of Indian Standard to safeguard the indigenous crop varieties. Before discussing this topic, I will show you this year prelims question. Yes, please read. This is this year's question only. Read the question. Have you understood anything? I mean, what the question is saying, can you please explain me? If you can explain, then we can move forward for the topic. Yes, at least explain me the question. I'm not asking the answer, at least explain me what the question is asking. Okay, so see, basically the question is asking about the standards. You know about BIS, what is Bureau of Indian Standards? Do you have any idea about ISI mark? So earlier the name of this agency was different and it used to give the ISI mark. So for what ISI mark is given? Yes, standards. Standards of what? Standards of anything. Standard or certification for the quality, for the safety. So see, basically Bureau of Indian Standards is the national standards giving body of India. So for example, this question is about the bomb disposal system. I can give the standard for anything in India, for any goods or any services. So giving the standards means that the quality of particular product or service is very good. So if Bureau of Indian Standards is setting the standard of anything, then each and every wholesaler or each and every dealer in India must maintain the standards of every good or service in India. So this question was about the national standards of the bomb disposal system. That whatever bomb disposal system India is having, it must follow a particular standard. So why this question was asked? Because it was in news this year or previous year. Understood what the question is asking? Now the question is asking that BIS has introduced the standards for bomb disposal system. Related to that, answer these questions. So first is the new standard is known as IS 19445-2025. So here UPSC is expecting you to remember the Indian standard also. IS means the Indian standard. So if any important thing is in news, you have to remember the name of that standard also. So this Indian standard is related to bomb disposal system. So first of all, you have to remember the name of the standard. Second thing, it improves interoperability of equipment across agencies. So basically second statement is asking the significance of this Indian standard. Third statement, it was developed by all these agencies. So basically it is asking that what all agencies were involved in making this standard. So from now onwards, whenever Bureau of Indian Standards releases Indian standards for anything, you have to at least focus on these things, because UPSC has already asked in 2026. Now based on this question, we will discuss Indian standards which were in news this time. So you understood what the question is saying, right? Okay. So what is the news? This time Bureau of Indian Standards have released the Indian standards for the community seed bank management requirement. So what are the Indian standards for community seed bank management requirement? It is IS 20201-2026. So even if next year UPSC asks that IS 20201-2026 is related to what? This Indian standard is related to what? So it will be community seed bank management requirements. Question was on the bomb disposal system. If again question is asked, at least you must remember this standard. After that, yes, so about BIS only I discussed. Why it is more important for the next year's exam? Because this is the first national standard for any community seed bank management. We'll discuss what is community seed bank management. But what I am saying is, for next year, why this is important? Because this is the first time. This is the first time that any kind of standard has been provided for the community seed bank management. Now, let's discuss first that what was the need that Bureau of Indian Standards have given the standards or certifications to the community seed banks. See, let's consider there are two farmers, farmer A and B, right? Now, for example, farmer A have certain quantity of certain quality of seeds, and farmer A wants some more other variety of seeds to grow in the agricultural field. So what does farmer A will do? Farmer A will set aside certain percentage of seeds which A is having, and it will exchange these seed varieties with different seed varieties from farmer B. So in that way, now farmer A is having two different varieties. So earlier farmers used to do these things. So in that way, what was happening? The local seed varieties or traditional seed varieties were being exchanged between farmers, but they were preserved anyhow. But now what is happening in modern times, many farmers are more and more focusing on the commercial seed varieties. Commercial seed varieties means the main focus is on the yield or productivity. They are not focusing that the previous older seed varieties, are we able to preserve them or not. So that's why Bureau of Indian Standards have brought these Indian standards. The main purpose is to preserve the traditional or the old seed varieties. Now why I am saying that traditional or old seed varieties are important? Because many seed varieties in India are drought resistant, right? They can easily grow in the drought prone areas. Many seed varieties in India are flood resistant, or many seed varieties in India are the pest resistant. So consider an area in India which is drought prone. Now if you have any crop variety which is drought resistant, for example, if we talk about any variety of millets, so consider millets can easily grow in this area. So millets have the capacity to sustain the population of entire area. How? It will focus on the nutritional capability of that area. It will focus on the economic status. It will focus on the social status, etc., etc. So here, if India is preserving the local seed varieties which are drought resistant, flood resistant, then it can lead to the sustainable development. Why I am saying this? Because see, the farmers in the drought prone area cannot grow any crop which is water intensive, right? The farmers in the Rajasthan cannot grow sugarcane or rice which are water intensive. But if farmers have the local seed varieties which are suitable for their climatic conditions, then that thing will be sustainable, right? So to do that, at least we must have our local seeds, because nowadays no one is focusing on the local seeds. Nowadays farmers are focusing that yield must be good so that we will be getting MSP, that's it. But here the main focus of Bureau of Indian Standards is to focus on the local seed varieties. So the solution to preserve the local seed varieties is a community seed bank. So see, this is a picture of community seed banks, and community seed bank, different variety of seeds will be there. So basically you can consider this community seed bank as a village seed library. So see, what you are doing in library, if you want various books, you want to read many books and you don't want to purchase them, what you are doing, you will issue some books from the library, you will read them, you will give them back, right? Same thing will be happening in the community seed banks. If a farmer wants this variety of crop, farmer will take this crop, it will grow all these crops in the agricultural field. After the harvest, after the good productivity, this same amount of crop farmer will return back to the library, or it will return back to the community seed bank. So what is happening here? Each and every farmer of that village will be able to take these local seed varieties. That farmer will be able to cultivate all the varieties, and still the good amount of varieties will be present in the community seed bank. Now see, community seed bank is good solution, but what was the requirement to give the Indian standards? Because this is the first time Indian standards is given to community seed bank. So reason for that is, see, Bureau of Indian Standards is saying, just a second. Yes. So Bureau of Indian Standards is saying, if you are maintaining a community seed bank, don't maintain it just for the namesake, just for saying that our village is having a community seed bank. If you are maintaining a community seed bank, at least have the good quality of seeds in that bank. So it's not like just for the namesake you are saying that this bank is having a lot of varieties of seeds. If you want to use those seeds actually in the agricultural field, the quality of those seeds must be maintained. How you will maintain the quality? This quality will be maintained by the standards which is given by the Bureau of Indian Standards. So the standards, just now we discussed what those standards will say. They will say that how this community seed bank must dry the seeds, how they must clean the seeds, how they must check the quality of seeds, how they must preserve or store the seeds, so that actually the quality of seeds in the seed banks will be very good, so that farmers can actually borrow them. Understood? Because there is no point that you are maintaining a community seed bank also, then also farmers are taking seeds from the seed companies. What is the purpose of that? So that's why Indian standards are provided to the community seed bank, so that please maintain a good quality of seeds in these banks, so that farmers can no longer have to depend on the expensive seed companies. That's it. Now, since UPSC is asking agencies also, so what is the important agency here? This standard is developed by Indian Council of Agricultural Research, National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources. This is the important agency which is involved here. Now, just now the previous year question which we discussed, in that one agency of Russia was also mentioned, right? So maybe you don't remember all these agencies, but at least you know that no foreign agency is involved here. So this is how you eliminate the options in prelims. That maybe you don't remember all these names, but even if you read all these names, you will understand that okay, these are very general. I can easily say okay, these are correct. But at least you know that no foreign agency is involved here. So even if this type of question was asked, you can easily say that statement 3 was wrong in that question. Okay, so if we talk about the importance, so importance is very obvious. If we talk about the farmers, so no longer they have to be dependent on the expensive seed companies, right? If we talk about the agriculture, so see, the important characteristic of local seed varieties is they are not draining the soil of their moisture or nutrients completely, or they are not threat to the biodiversity. So that's why it will be good thing for agriculture also. And if we talk about significance for overall India, so it will be important for the food security also. Because at present, though India have a lot of food production, but you already know that India is lacking in the nutrition. And what is the reason for that? We are yes, very good. So we are discussing about the hidden hunger in India, right? What is the hidden hunger? On the face of it, we will say we have a bumper food production. We are having a lot of food grains, but those food grains are lacking nutrients. Why they are lacking nutrients? Because the quality of seed is not good. So overall, it will be good for the food security in India also. Yes, now if we talk about the Bureau of India Standards, so please remember this is the national standard body of India and this is a statutory body. So this is a statutory body formed under Bureau of Indian Standards Act of 2016. So just now I discussed about ISI mark, right? This ISI mark was provided by this institute only because earlier it was known as Indian Standards Institution, that is ISI. Now after that in 2016 its name was changed. So this was created in 1947. Now without seeing the board, please tell me that this should come under which ministry in India? Okay, you have already seen. Okay, so basically it is dealing with the quality of products which are used by the consumers in India. So this will come under Ministry of Consumer Affairs. So I think that's it for BIS. Prelims question we already discussed. Yes, next topic comes about the rejection of nomination for the Rajya Sabha candidature. So have you heard about this news? Yes? Have you read about this news? That candidature or nomination paper of one of the member of Congress party was rejected for the Rajya Sabha elections. Yes? Do you? Yes. What have you read? Tell me. Madhya Pradesh. From filing the papers. So what was the reason? Have you read? Okay, you don't remember. Okay, no problem. So basically, the news she is saying is correct. So recently, the nomination of one of the Congress leader in India was, she wanted to contest the Rajya Sabha election from Madhya Pradesh. So her candidature was rejected. Candidature was rejected means she was not even allowed to fight for the elections. So see, if any person have to contest for the elections, then that person have to do two things. First of all, you have to fill the nomination paper, which is a kind of application form. Second thing is, you have to complete an affidavit form, which is also known as Form 26. So basically, if I talk in general about the affidavit, So what is the main purpose of affidavit? You are declaring a certain amount of thing which the general people must know. So we are talking about the elections in India. So any person which is fighting for the election, he or she must tell certain things which the voters must know. For example, if any criminal case is going on, right? So it was related to case only. So in affidavit, the voters in India must know that whether any criminal case is going on against the candidate or the candidate is bankrupt. That means the candidate have not filled the loans or not paid the interest, or candidate has got bankrupt, or candidate was involved in the corrupt practices, anything. So these candidates have to declare all these things, so that based on all this information, the citizens or the voters can make their decision that whether I have to vote for this person or not, right? So in this case, when we are talking about Meenakshi Natarajan, so her candidature was rejected by the returning officer. And what was the reason given by the returning officer? The reason was that against Meenakshi Natarajan, a case was going on in the Telangana High Court. So returning officer has said that when a case was going on against you, why haven't you mentioned that case in the affidavit? Because affidavit required to mention all these kind of cases, right? So the point of Meenakshi Natarajan was that case was not a criminal case. That case was related to a personal dispute, and that's why I thought mentioning that case was not important in the affidavit. So this was the overall reason why it was rejected. I'm not going much deeper in the politics, just I will be discussing for the prelims related points. See, now when we are talking about the rejection of nomination, so here two things you must know very clearly. One word is the disqualification and one word is the rejection. You must know the difference between disqualification and rejection. Disqualification means the particular person is barred from sitting in the parliament, or that person for temporary period of time or permanently can no longer be the member of parliament. Rejection means you are eligible to be member of parliament, but since you have not filled the application form or if you have not disclosed certain things, so at present you cannot fight for the elections. So disqualification means the word itself says you are no longer qualified. Rejection means you are qualified, but because of the certain conditions you cannot fight the elections. So this case is related to rejection. It's not related to disqualification. Okay, because she is not already the member of Rajya Sabha. She wanted to contest, but her nomination was rejected. So since we are discussing these two words, so quickly I will discuss the basic grounds for disqualification as well as rejection in India. So if we talk about the disqualification of member of parliament, so basically under two headings we can read it. First is related to constitution. So constitution under article 102 talks about the disqualifications of members of parliament. Second is the important act, that is RPA, Representation of People Act 1951. If we talk about the disqualification under constitution, so first disqualification is holding an office of profit. What is the meaning of office of profit? Yes? Yes, very good. Office of profit means, see, if apart from your own role, you are benefiting from other government operations. For example, if a member of parliament is also becoming the chairperson of any government organization, for example, any PSU. So you are already member of parliament and then also you are gaining income from the other government organization. So that government organization will be your office of profit. So if you are having office of profit, you can no longer be the member of parliament. Second is mental state and financial standing. Mental state means if you are of not very good sound mind, how you can make the legislations, right? So you can no longer be the member of parliament. Next is the financial standing. That means, have you repaid your loans? Have you not got bankrupt? Bankrupt means you will easily say, I cannot pay the loan, I don't have the money. So we don't want all these kind of persons in the parliament. After that, citizenship. If you are no longer citizen of India, you can no longer be the member of parliament. So citizenship can be revoked in many ways. You voluntarily can give up your citizen, that I am no longer I am no longer citizen of India, or government can take back your citizenship. under the certain conditions. So these were some of the important points under the Constitution. If we talk about the Representation of People's Act, first criteria is the serious criminal convictions under section 8 of RPA. Criminal conviction means if you are found guilty, if you are imprisoned for 2 years or more than 2 years, then you are disqualified from fighting the elections for 6 years. So that 2 years for which you are imprisoned, and after that 6 years, you can no longer fight the elections. So this is about the serious criminal convictions. After that, corrupt practices which are mentioned under section 8 of RPA. Corrupt practices means if you are involved in all these practices, for example, bribery, or if you are trying to manipulate the mind of voters, these all things come under corrupt practices only. So then also you will be disqualified. Next, failing to show the election cost. That means if you are not able to tell correctly the returning officer that this amount of money I spent in the election campaigning, then also you will be disqualified. After that, anti-defection law under the 10th schedule of the Constitution. What anti-defection law says? Yes? Very. So if you have changed the political party, or if you are not working according to the will of your political party, or if you have given up the membership voluntarily of political party, you will be disqualified. So then also you will be disqualified. So this is not a comprehensive list, but at least I have discussed some of the important points under which any person can be disqualified. Now let's discuss some of the grounds for rejection. First ground, hiding the material facts. Just now we discussed that Meenakshi Natarajan haven't disclosed about the case which is going in the High Court. That's why she was disqualified. Nomination was rejected. Next is the lack of valid backers. That means when you are filing the nomination paper, your nomination, so it's not like you are only filing the nomination paper and returning officer will say, okay, you can fight the election. That nomination paper must be supported by at least 10 MLAs of that state. At least 10 MLAs must say that I support him or her, and he or she can fight for the elections. So at least 10% of MLAs or 10 MLAs, whichever may be the situation. So whenever you are filing the nomination paper, it must be backed or it must be supported by 10% or 10 MLAs. Next thing, failing to pay the deposit. See, not every person in this country can fight for the elections. If you want to fight for the elections, you have to provide a certain amount of deposit. So if we talk about the general category candidates, I think that deposit is 10,000 rupees. And if we talk about the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe reserved candidates, so that amount is 5,000 rupees. So if you fail to deposit that amount of money, then also your candidature can be rejected. And finally, missing the official oath. So whenever you file the nomination paper, that time also you have to take one oath for the Constitution before the returning officer. So if you fail to take that oath also, it can be also one of the ground for rejection. So these are some of the important points which can be asked in prelims, because since the question was in rejection, but question can be asked about the disqualification also. Yes, now this topic, basically this topic we will be discussing that what all symbols can be used for a political party in India. So basically here the news was, you already know about Cockroach Janata Party, right? In the previous class also we discussed. So basically this news is that Cockroach Janata Party is now asking Election Commission of India that whether a cockroach can be allotted as an election symbol in India. So this is the question, because they are saying that our foundation was only the cockroach, right? So can we use cockroach as our election symbol? So because of this, election symbols reservation and allotment order of 1968 was also in news, because based on this order only election symbols are allocated to political parties in India. So now, before discussing about the symbols, I will first discuss a brief about the political parties in India. See, if we talk about the political party, so if in India a group of citizens want to call that group as a political party, then that unit must have to be registered with the Election Commission of India, right? If any group you are saying that this group is a political party, that means that group must be registered with Election Commission of India. So to call a group as political party, it must be registered with Election Commission of India. Now in these registered parties also, you will be having two kind of parties. First kind of party will be recognized parties, and second kind of parties will be unrecognized parties. In recognized parties, what all parties will come? For example, national party, or for example, state party. I think in polity you might have read that what are the criteria required for a party to become a national party. Have you read? Don't worry, I am not asking the percentage, but I am just asking, have you read? If you haven't read, go back home, open the chapter of political party. In that, certain criteria is given that if a party want to be considered itself as a national party, then what percentage of votes or what percentage or what share of seats that party must have in the state legislature or in the Lok Sabha. Okay, so there is a particular criteria if you want to call a unit as a state party or political party. Okay, so any recognized, unrecognized party, national party or state party will come because these parties have the required share or percentage of vote or required share of seats which is required by the rules. Apart from all these parties, all other parties in India will come under the unrecognized parties. Unrecognized parties means though they are registered under Election Commission of India, but still they are not able to receive that percentage of vote share or seats in the state legislature or Lok Sabha. That's why they are not recognized by the Election Commission of India. Now let's come about the types of election symbols in India. Now you will get a good idea. So see, if we talk about the election symbols in India, so there are two election symbols. First is the reserved symbol, second is the free symbol. Reserved symbol, name itself suggests that it will be reserved for some parties in India. So reserved symbols are reserved for the recognized parties in India. Recognized parties, national party, state party. So reserved symbols will be allocated to reserved political parties in India. For example, lotus or for example hand. No other political party in India can use these symbols. This is the meaning of reserved symbol. If we talk about the free symbols, so all the unrecognized political parties and the independent candidates. Independent candidates means who are not part of any political party. They are running the election by themselves. Okay, so independent candidates as well as unrecognized political parties, they will get the free symbols. They will never get the reserved symbol. So here some of the free symbols, balloon, air conditioner, grapes, you cannot imagine. Many type of election symbols, free election symbols are available at present in India. So here if we revise, who get which kind of symbol? So national party and state party will be getting the reserved symbols in India. Reserved symbols means no other party in India can use them. And registered unrecognized parties and independent candidates will be getting the free symbols in India. Now important thing is, coming back to the question, the context was Cockroach Janata Party has asked that whether cockroaches can be used as an election symbol or not. So see, here to answer this question, let's go back to 1990s. So what happened in 1990s? Animal welfare groups have asked the Election Commission of India that if you are using animals as the election symbol, then animals can be subjected to cruelty during the election campaigns. Because in election campaign, no one is seeing any rule. They are just hitting on one party or the other. So if you are using animal as the election symbol, animal can also be subjected to cruelty. So what happened in 1990s? Because of the request of the animal welfare group, the Election Commission of India has stopped allotting the animal symbols for the political parties. So earlier, before 1990s, animal could be allotted as the election symbol, but after 1990s, now no longer any political party can use animal as the election symbol. So reason was the prevention of the animal cruelty in India. So see, I am saying that after 1990s it was banned. So can you think any major political party in India which is still using animal as the election symbol? Yes? Tell me. Yes? Elephant. Related to which party? It's BSP, right? Bahujan Samaj Party. Leader is Mayawati. So why BSP can still use elephant as the election symbol? Yes? Yes, very good. Because elephant was given as the election symbol to BSP before 1990s. So that's why that symbol, that party is still using animal as the election symbol. But after that, no party got, and now no party can take animal as the election symbol. So this I discussed. Now, yes, one more important thing for the prelims, and that is that two political parties in India, there is a possibility that two political parties in India can have same election symbol, and this can happen when those political parties are present in different states. Understood? So if these are two states in India, so two political parties in these two states can have same election symbol. For example, symbol are like apple or tree. So these election symbols can be used by two different parties in two different states. Reason being that these political parties are not competing among each other. That's why. So no confusion will be there. So please remember, if UPSC give a statement like this, that in India there is a possibility that two political parties can have same election symbol. So this statement will be correct because I am using the possibility. Is it possible? Yes. Is it every time possible? No. Sometimes it is possible. When it is possible, when the parties belong to two different states. And as governing law I already said, election symbols are allotted under Election Symbols Order of 1968. And which agency deals with all these things? Election Commission of India. Under which article? 324. 324 of the Constitution. All these things are dealt by Election Commission of India. So here Article 324, power of superintendence, direction and control of elections. So allotment of election symbols also come under Article 324. Yes. Now next article is related to Shiv Shakti point. So here recently the news is, see, Shiv Shakti point, it is related to which mission? Yes, very good. So Shiv Shakti point is a point where the rover of Chandrayaan 3 mission landed on moon. So Shiv Shakti point is present at the south pole of the moon. So here the news is, recently the data was shared by the Chandrayaan 3 mission, and according to that data, the soil which is present at the lunar surface, the chemical composition of soil is almost same the chemical composition of asteroid which was found a few years back in Antarctica. I will speak once again. See, here is moon, here is the south pole of the moon, somewhere here we have the Shakti point. So this was the recent finding that the material, the soil which is found at the south pole of the moon, this material is resembling the soil which is found at the Antarctica on the earth. Understood what the question is saying? This is the major finding. That here the some asteroid hit the earth few years back. The composition of that asteroid was equal to the composition of soil which is found at the south surface of the moon. Understood? So Shiv Shakti point is the point where the rover of the Chandrayaan 3 mission landed. Now please understand in this way that this is the moon, this is the south pole of the moon, and yes, I will explain here. So see, this is moon, this is south pole of the moon, and the components which we got, the findings which we got from the soil sample, they had two type of components. First is this anorthized material. This is an igneous rock. So basically, if we talk in general, the upper surface of the moon is composed of some kind of igneous rocks. But according to the recent findings, this upper surface had the combination of igneous rocks as well as magnesium rich rocks. This is the major news, because the magnesium rich rocks are generally found at the deeper layers of the moon. But at present, the combination of magnesium rich rocks as well as igneous rocks was formed at the upper surface of the moon. This was the news. Now there are various theories that how this is possible, right? Because if you are saying that magnesium is formed at the deeper layers of the moon, the first conclusion from this is that moon is having different layers. because earlier we did not know. Like we know that Earth have different layers, right? So based on this finding, we can easily say Moon is having different layers. Now see, for this also we have different theory that why Moon have different layers. So see, in news this term was given. Term was lunar magma ocean theory. So earlier it was considered that if this is a surface of Moon, so earlier this surface of Moon was covered by the ocean of the molten rocks. Over a period of time, those molten rocks they cooled down, and when that rock was cooling down, so the layers or the material which were very light, they came on the upper surface, and the materials which were very dense, they went down to the deeper layers. So for example, iron, magnesium came down to the deeper layers. In the upper layers we have some igneous rocks. So this was the theory based on which we can say that Moon have different layers. Now what is the reason that the soil from the deeper layers is present in the upper layer? So theory for that is that before some period of time, a asteroid or meteoroid have hit the Moon, and because of that a depression is created in the Moon. So it's like you can consider in this way. For example, you are throwing the stone in the pond. When you are throwing the stone, so water from the deeper layers will splash out. So same thing happened here. When the meteoroid struck the surface of the Moon, so the material from the deeper layers of the Moon also came out, and it mixed with the materials on the upper layer. So that's why we can say that here we got the combination of igneous rock as well as magnesium rich rock. So this thing which I am telling now, that this meteorite have hit the Moon and a depression is created. So that depression is known as South Pole Aitken Basin. So actually there is a depression on the Moon, and this depression is known as South Pole Aitken Basin. So South Pole Aitken Basin is the largest and deepest impact basin on the Moon, which is located on the far side south pole of the Moon. So when this asteroid have hit the Moon, the material from the deeper layers of the Moon might have come out, and they have mixed with the materials on the outer surface of the Moon. That's it. Yes, next article is about the new herbicide tolerant mustard hybrids. So if we talk about the news, so see, this mustard which we are talking about is the IMI resistant. So basically IMI is a herbicide in India. So see, earlier what used to happen, earlier what was the problem faced by the mustard farmers in India? Earlier, if farmers are spraying herbicide in the agricultural field, so along with the weeds, this mustard plant also used to die. Earlier this was the problem. That's why now farmers have created a new hybrid of the mustard plants, mustard seed, which is resistant to this IMI herbicide. This is the important thing. So see, in this context, we must know an important parasitic weed, and that is Orobanche weed. Orobanche weed is the important weed which is affecting the mustard plants in India. So the important thing about this Orobanche weed is, for example, this is mustard plant. So mainly this Orobanche weed, the main growth of this weed will be underground. A little part will be shown in the upper side, and what this weed will do, this weed will connect with the roots of the mustard plants, and it will drain the mustard plant of all its nutrients as well as water. That's why this Orobanche weed was very important to take out. So earlier farmer used to use the IMI herbicide, but because of this herbicide, mustard plants also used to die. So now farmers have developed one new model, that is IMI resistant mustard plants. Now, so I think yes, I discussed this. Now, important thing is that I am using the word hybrid. I am not using the word GM. So this is not a genetically modified crop. It's not like farmers, the scientists have inserted a gene of living organism or microorganism in the seed or the plant. It's a hybrid plant, and this plant is developed by a mutation breeding. In mutation breeding, what is happening? For example, this is seed of mustard plant. So you will subject this seed of mustard plant to some kind of radiations or some kind of chemicals. And under these radiations or chemicals, naturally variations or changes will happen in the genetic material of the seed itself. You are not inserting anything inside the seed. You are subjecting this seed to you are exposing this seed to some kind of radiations or chemicals. So automatically variations will happen in the genetic material of the seed. So what will be those kind of variations? This seed will automatically become resistant to IMI herbicide. And next thing is, here an important enzyme was in news. UPSC can ask about this ALS enzyme. So how this seed of mustard plant was developed? When you are exposing this seed to any radiation, no? So this seed, what this seed will do? This seed will become tolerant to ALS. ALS is a growth enzyme in mustard plants. So now when you will spray these herbicide on the mustard plants, ALS, which is a growth enzyme in mustard plants, now this enzyme will not be blocked. Because earlier herbicide used to block this growth enzyme. But now growth enzyme cannot be blocked, and hence our mustard plants can be saved. Understood? Yes, to benefits. Yes. Next important topic comes the northern lights. So now I won't be asking the question, I am just quickly explaining. So yes, tell me, what are northern lights? Yes, auroras. Okay. How they are created? Yes? Can you speak louder? So you are saying ionosphere is involved here. Okay, let me explain. See, this is the picture. What I want to explain in this picture. See, here I will be talking about the northern lights, okay, or the auroras. So here, first of all, I will explain that how these auroras are created. See, as you know that continuously sun is sending different kind of radiation towards the earth. Okay, so in form of coronal mass ejections or in the form of solar wind, solar storms, etc. But continuously sun is sending harmful radiations towards the earth. But still, why the life on earth is able to sustain? Because the earth have the natural protective shield, and that shield is called as the magnetic field of the earth. So whenever these harmful radiations are coming towards the earth, they will be deviated back by the this magnetic field. But if we talk about the poles of the earth, which we also call as polar cusp means a kind of gap. Because see, magnetic lines are going this way and they are going this way. Here we have a small gap. And in this small gap, the solar particles can enter. Because here solar particles cannot enter. Here they cannot enter. Anywhere they cannot enter, but they can enter near the poles. So when the magnetic field, when the solar particles or solar storm interacts with the gases in the Earth's atmosphere, certain amount of lights will be created. And those lights are called aurora borealis in northern poles, and they are called aurora australis in the southern poles. This is the basic concept. So if I ask the question, what is the mechanism, how they are created? They are created when the solar charged particles interact with the gases in the Earth's atmosphere. And where they can interact only at the poles, because only at the poles magnetic field provide them some gap. Because where the magnetic field is weak, there only solar particles can enter. Otherwise, they cannot enter Earth's magnetic field. Otherwise they cannot enter Earth's atmosphere. Understood? No? Okay. Do you have any idea that Earth have a magnetic field? You have that idea, right? Now please consider this way. See, this is the magnetic field, right? This is Earth's magnetic field. This you already know that solar particles are coming continuously from the sun, right? So these solar particles from the sun are very harmful. This you know. So if these solar particles are reaching to you or me directly, we will not survive because the temperature is very high, heat is very high. Now since Earth have a protective shield, that is a magnetic field, so because of all this magnetic field, the solar particles are not able to reach us. They are not able to reach the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, so you consider in this way, if I am saying that no, magnetic field is going in this way, understood? It is going in this way. So this is the region. See, magnetic field is going in this way, So there is some gap, right? If it is going in this way, here we have some gap. So when the solar particles are coming here, this magnetic field will reflect it back. But if it is coming here, there is no magnetic field. So it can enter the Earth's atmosphere. And in Earth's atmosphere, major gases, what we have, nitrogen as well as oxygen. So whenever this solar particles interact with the gases in the Earth's atmosphere, nitrogen or oxygen, so different kind of lights will be produced. Why lights are produced? Because the particles which are coming from the sun are the charged particles. That's why some kind of phenomena can happen and lights can be produced. Now understood? So if I ask you what are the working principle or how these lights are formed, so tell me in one simple line. How northern lights are produced? When the solar particles, no, so don't explain this much. You just say when the solar particles interact with the gases present in the Earth's atmosphere, so lights are produced. And if I ask how they are able to enter, then you will say because there is a kind of gap which is present at the polar region, so solar particles can easily enter there. Yes, next article is related to Zojila tunnel. So recently India has seen a final breakthrough because Zojila tunnel is supposed to be of around 14.2 kilometers. So here the news is that the excavation is completed for around 13 kilometers. Okay, then I will upload the PDF and you can ask any doubt in the next week's class. Okay then, thank you.